The Dougherty County Coroner Michael Fowler is doing everything he can to prevent accidental drownings. For the third consecutive year, he's hosting the Swim for Life campaign aimed at teaching children how to swim. Fox 31's Kaylee McCarthy sat down with the coroner. She joins us live in the studio with the latest. Kaylee.
Aaron, although Coroner Fowler's job is to pronounce the cause of death, he says he wants to do everything he can to preserve life, which includes preventing drownings this summer. Next Saturday from 11 until 2, families are invited to register their kids for the Swim for Life swim lessons. The Boys and Girls Club, Albany Rec Department, and the YMCA are all offering the summer program. The cost is $20 for each child to participate. In order to make sure no child gets turned away, Fowler is encouraging the community to each sponsor one child. He says it's crucial for these kids to learn how to swim, especially during these hot temperatures, and adds it's all about preventing accidental drownings for years to come in Dougherty County.
If something happened, some church gonna bury that child, or some teacher gonna not have that child in class next year. So maybe it's the child that coming in your class that we can teach them how to swim so they won't die during the summer. So we don't want no death during the summer.
Since the start of the program 3 years ago, Fowler says there hasn't been one accidental drowning death in Dougherty County. If you're interested in sponsoring a child, you can write a check out to Swim for Life. Fowler says he will pick up the checks, or you can mail in your check to the coroner's office. Live from the Fox 31 studio, I'm Kaylee McCarthy.
All right, Kaylee, thanks. While keeping yourself safe with swimming, you also want to make sure your skin is too while you're in the sun. One consumer activist organization says nearly 2/3 of sunscreens on the market probably don't do the job and are likely unsafe. The Environmental Working Group says those sunscreens would flunk new standards proposed by the FDA in February. The reason, according to that group, is because they either contain oxybenzone, a chemical linked to hormone changes in men and shorter pregnancies for women, or they don't meet FDA standards for UVA protection.
Well, wearing sunscreen isn't the only thing you'll want to be keeping a close eye on as far as these heat safety tips heading into the weekend. We saw a hot day today, about 6 degrees higher than normal for where we should be this time of year. But the record, 100 degrees set back in 1962, will be the reality and the air temperature that we'll see on the thermometer as we head into the weekend. On top of that, we'll see wind. Those feels like temperatures, the heat indices, the heat index, it'll feel like between 102 and 106 South Georgia over the weekend and into the start of next week. Keep that in mind as you're making your weekend plans. Right now, though, not that hot. We're seeing temperatures in the 80s, and I think most of us will be wishing the temperatures will return to these numbers as we head into next week as well. 82 in Cordele, 81 for Leesburg, a degree or two warmer in Albany at 83. Sylvester, the warm spot on the map, at 85. In the upper 70s right now in our eastern neighborhoods across the board. Heading out the door tomorrow, 73 at the bus stop, 87 by lunchtime, and as we head into the evening, that high 94 degrees around 5 o'clock. In just a few moments, we'll talk about the record-setting heat and how long it plans to stick around, when we may see measurable snowfall, that's not in the forecast, rainfall, and a look at the tropics where we are in just a few moments.
During this weekend's extreme heat, it's important to limit the time you spend outdoors. The Department of Public Health is urging people who work outside to be extremely cautious. District Deputy Health Director Brenda Green says employees who work outside should ask to see if their schedule can be altered. When possible, she recommends getting work done before noon or late at night. If you do feel yourself getting overheated, Green says it's important to get inside and drink plenty of water. She says you should also try to avoid yard work in the evening.
Some of us think that after we get home, we'll do a little yard work and get some things done, but it is still extremely hot at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. So try not to be out during those times. Just avoid those times in the afternoon.
If you have no choice but to work outside, Green recommends seeking out shade and drinking plenty of water. Although if you're feeling abnormal, dizzy, nauseous, or have a bad headache, or your pulse is pounding, Green says these are all signs that you are simply getting too hot. This holiday weekend, if you take your children to the playground to play, you need to be careful. Fire safety educator Jeremy Webb says children need to be careful when playing on the equipment. He says with the heat comes hot playground equipment.
Being mindful of that when you have your children out during the playground on some of the hottest points of the day, that equipment gets very, very hot, and you could get sustained burns from that equipment.
The swing, it doesn't feel that hot in my hands, but my feet it does. Yeah.
Webb says it only takes equipment being at 100 degrees to burn a child. Dougherty County School System is rolling out its Seamless Summer program. The program provides summer meals for children. This year, the school system has more than 40 sites where kids ages 1 to 18 can get a free hot meal. The program starts next Tuesday and will end July 12th.
When the Dougherty County School District is out for the summer, there's a void. Therefore, there's a lot of kids that are in need of a healthy meal.
For a full list of the sites, visit our website at Wfxl.com. Safety concerns during ride-sharing trips has Lyft stepping up its safety protocols. The company is adding an in-app panic button for riders who need to call 911. Lyft will also include an enlarged version of a driver's license plate number in the app. Lyft says this is being done to prevent passengers from getting into the wrong vehicle. The company will also offer sexual harassment prevention training to drivers. The move comes weeks after authorities say a University of South Carolina student was killed by someone posing as a rideshare driver. You may be one step closer to having your mail delivered by a robot or at least touched by one on its journey. The U.S. Postal Service launching a 2-week test of autonomous trucks. The pilot program uses trucks from the startup Too Simple to traverse a 1,000-mile route between distribution centers in Phoenix and Dallas. The Postal Service selected that route because federal regulations require 2 driver teams on the 22-hour-long route. There are no such restrictions on self-driving vehicles, which would make the trek faster and cheaper. Long-haul routes are also the most difficult to keep staffed with qualified drivers. Turning to politics now, a dramatic turn of events today in Washington, where many thought Democrats and the president were making real progress on a critical infrastructure bill to fix roads and bridges. Instead, a dramatic fight played out at both the White House and on Capitol Hill. That's where Sinclair's chief political correspondent Scott Thuman is with the latest.
It's not just America's infrastructure in need of smoothing over, but the relationship between President Trump and Democrats, which suffered its own major roadblock Wednesday. It started early when Speaker Pelosi held a closed-door strategy session with Democrats.
And we believe that the President of the United States is engaged in a cover-up.
That didn't sit well with the president when just hours later in the Oval Office, both sides were supposed to move forward on that $2 trillion plan.
To watch what happened in the White House would make your jaw drop.
And I walked into the room and I told Senator Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, I want to do infrastructure. I want to do it more than you want to do it. But you know what? You can't do it under these circumstances. So get these phony investigations over with.
Any progress on one of the few major legislative items it seemed Washington was prone to pass ground to a halt, making it unclear what, if anything, they can agree on. Especially with the president demanding an end to the investigations, just as the chatter gets louder for his ousting.
All of a sudden, I hear last night they're going to have a meeting right before this meeting to talk about the I word. The I word. Can you imagine?
He took a pass, and it just makes me wonder why he did that. In any event, I pray for the President of the United States.
Tonight's question of the day is, will Congress be able to pass any meaningful legislation before the 2020 election? You can vote by visiting our website, wfxl.com/question.
The Trump administration is seemingly walking back from the president's tough talks on Iran, choosing deterrence as a strategy instead of threats of force. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan are committed to preventing further escalation in the region. This is in sharp contrast to President Trump's weekend tweet, where he said, quote, "If Iran wants to fight, that will be the official end of Iran. Never threaten the United States again." Clearly, the president was not taking war off of the table. Threatening Iran with elimination is a bad position to take, and Trump should know better. But the most interesting thing about the timing of Trump's tweet was that it came on the heels of de-escalation talks from both sides. What are we to believe? It seems that Trump is continuing to take his foreign policy cues from Fox News, rather than years of Iranian and U.S. relations strategy. His off-base tweet only further showcases his anger over not being able to force Iran's hand. The Trump administration has attempted to use a combination of hawkish rhetoric, diplomatic pressure, economic sanctions, and now military posturing in order to change the nature of the Iranian regime. And it isn't working. Let's get to the point. The president has once again allowed his anger and frustration to cloud his judgment. The answer to reducing Iran's nuclear threat won't be found in increased sanctions or late-night Twitter threats.
Amisha, our country has to be united against the great threat that Iran poses. Coming up, my thoughts on the recent dialogue between the Trump administration and Congress on Iran.
The views expressed by commentators do not necessarily reflect the views of this station.